Phew, that break ended up taking a lot less time than I thought it would, and I'm about to upload this whole third class of this. It's actually the 11th class of the Tarantino Auteur. Moving on to the next half, the USC Calarts Coursera Harvard class. And I had to fix this thing where like it only adds and stores data in different ways, and I had to like I make more storage, and it's fine because it all gets recorded and put other places. And we find ways of preserving the oddities out there in video land, but we're not really video, but yeah, we are because we're being recorded by the video camera right here. So that I can see a picture of myself is lucky because then I don't have like any problems looking around and looking at other things if I don't think that staring at the screen is all I need to do. But it makes it a lot easier because then I can imagine you all out there that enjoy this. Now we're talking more about it in the last thing I was trying to say about the one about Inglorious Bastards is that it's painterly, it's put together like a classical silent film. It's put together like this beautiful decor of mise en scène, spare no expense on the big studio shots, like in Kill Bill when they're Lucy Liu and Uma Thurman are fighting with all those ninjas. Uma Thurman has to kill all those ninjas, you know. And these big battle scenes are directed towards like the art of movie making are all totally iconography that we all remember from everyone in the world knows the iconography of Tarantino. They look at a film of his, they see a few minutes, they know it's a film by him. Usually that can happen with some other directors, but always with Tarantino. That's why another reason we argue the auteur claim. And the auteur claim is that he's an author. It's his work. Everything he's done with his name on it's his. That's the bottom line. If he put his name on it, then he's the author. No one can come along years later and say, I was actually the real him. Unless it's him playing a joke on us and he looks like a 20-year-old kid again, which last time I saw him, he looked like a 20-year-old kid. No, I'd say that. Just hang on. All right, so we talk about Inglourious Basterds. I'm not saying to just have a movie where we diss or don't diss on Germans. It was funny because it was like the way they dissed them was a funny way. It's like we're coming to drop payload on your country for the Holocaust is only one reason we're coming to drop the payload on your country. You know, here they've got the Germany with their pants down. They've got them all the way wound to the end, and then they just smash them down, which is more strangely how the war ended. It was more like all the Germans got destroyed. And everyone's, yeah, we saw Germany year zero. They were meant to be destroyed. Wasn't that something they were arguing when they were destroying other peoples? Now, this whole thing gets in the duck soup, like sort of Dr. Strangelove event, when it happens to be that the Inglourious Bastards already have a process moving that's going to eliminate Hitler. And I only talked good about all those German things because I believe in good things of German. It would have ruined the movie if the good guys were German in this because we wouldn't have taken it as a joke. But in a Fassbender film, we're never really scared of the Nazis in it because most of the ones in it are regular people that go by in regular life. You know, I mean, the worst it can get is like one of those American History X scenarios, really, where you had these like racist gangs gather and they kill you if you're not a racist, you know, and you are anyway. And I know there's that kind of thing, but I don't find that as extreme. And even if Tarantino extremes it out, hardcores it out with all these things, and we've kind of become like disambiguated with that. We kind of have been disenchanted. Not that it was a bad, violent scene. Not that the scene was violent and it was bad, or that the violent scene used to be only seen in like on HBO. The violent scenes are not as bad to us anymore because we're older. And when you watch a violent scene later in another movie, it seems worse than Pulp Fiction. You see what I'm saying? Like Scarface by Brian De Palma seems way more violent than Pulp Fiction. And then you get back to this whole Tipper Gore thing where she's like, these are nightmare movies. He's the nightmare of this ages. Like I said, I don't think they'd seen the movies, and they probably had and could identify iconography. But that he's not very offensive, for instance, by having the Jews come smash down Hitler, even in Germans' eyes, is kind of funny, and they're cool. It's like the Great Dictator. They're like, well, if it's funny and you like it, you know, they're not like really offended by that. We get these big misrepresentations as being America. They actually like America, so like all of us that wake up and every day they're like, man, America really screwed me over, is like 0 people on this continent, man. It's like, we all love to be here. We'd be in Germany if we could. It's great, dude, to just be on the planet, And when you're on the planet and got something to watch, the point I'm saying is that Tipper Gore probably wasn't paying attention to what movies were out. She was probably handed a list by some buccaneer of the censorship shop. Why the censorship shop always hits Tarantino is because they always hit those 90s movies guys that took it to the edge, ended their movie however they wanted to, threw in the ringer all they wanted to. There's like that movie Jade from the 90s, and it's like it's that guy who did Jade was done by the guy, not Jade Scorpion, that was later on. Jade was done by the guy, not Robert Aldrich, but somebody like that. Like the guy that made the movie where they're playing the cards, not the Chinese Syndrome. I'm botching this all up, but I'm not going to re-record because the point is that there was this movie Jade. And it was so intensely wild, and it was so intensely graphic, and it was so intensely beautiful of a movie that for movies, it's like Belly. There's another one where the sensitivity of how the visuals look, or Creme Master, for instance, the sensitivity of the visuals kind of go over you. Like if you're stoned, it kind of looks like they're being projected in your head. I'm not trying to be controversial by saying that either. And if you're coughing, it's okay, because that means it goes to the capillaries and everything's fine. All right. Django Unchained. This is we only have 10 more minutes, 14 more minutes. We'll go for it. We'll have a good time. After we got Inglourious Bastards, we waited and waited and waited, because we're always doing nothing but waiting for Tarantino's next movie. Will there be one? We'll never know. And each time, we didn't know, because he didn't announce it and make publicity of it, because he wanted to surprise his friends with a boom, there it is. That somebody once said that his films come out rapidly, but there aren't enough of them, is weird, because it seems like he's made more movies than anyone, and this is really only now number 7, Django Unchained, from Kill Bill being only one movie, which is strange because it's often elected as 2. But I think that was just an obvious thing that they were making, like, happen intentionally for publicity. Like, we'll make it one movie, but it's 2. And I'm still not saying making it for publicity is bad. Because, like, really, Tarantino's not like a real standout for commercialism in the sense that he'll just do whatever he's told. And I don't want you to have that sensibility even of Inglourious Bastards, even though, yeah, there were some murderous, righteous, rapist, evil Nazis. There's evil people in every generation of every group. Some of those guys would, like, outdo ethically wrong what is wrong. And I think that Django Unchained is on the same notice as that, like, the slave owner Leonardo DiCaprio is in Django Unchained. The slave owner Leonardo DiCaprio is a dive of corruption. It's Mandingoism all over again. It's the whole reason the Civil War started. He treats slaves like less than a dog hater would smack a dog around. He'd smack humans around. And to use that metaphor is good because the African Americans were treated as animals in the days of slavery, but even animals weren't treated as bad as these guys these black guys that were taken from Africa. So now we have this whole thing with Django, where there's several other Djangos. There's Western Django Sukiyaki, and there's Django from the Spanish version, and there's Django Unchained, and there might be another Django since Django Unchained. I don't know if it got registered as a real movie. And these other Djangos kind of put together this kind of like Kick-Ass Ninja, or like in the original Django movies, and Django Fett is where it comes from too, right? Django Fett. And that was kind of one of the reasons this was Django Unchained. And only connected loosely through this intertextuality is the reason that Tarantino has his own constructionism from other sources. He takes the pictures from another place, like Django Fett may have come after this, but it probably didn't, and when we'll all think about it, it didn't. But like at the same time, we're still thinking that was coming from the Django in the Spain version, which Tarantino and George Lucas probably knew about before it hit the screen, because a lot of times the film will be done and then it takes 5 years to get it out. The backlog hits so hard. They were saying the backlog was out on BFG. Remember that that Steven Spielberg was trying to direct it in 2003 and it came out in 2023 or something? Or 2000, not 2023, but 2013. And anyway, it was like it took like the layover was like 10 years on from the time you get the movie finished to the time it gets released. That could be part of what the problem is. And I'm not saying just release a film fast because you want to. You can't release a film fast when you're trying to go for perfection on every even sound and visuals. They've proven that if they get good sound and visuals, or exceptionally good sound and visuals, people will appreciate paying to see the film or paying to own the film, because the visuals and the good sound effects are what make people love movies. I know that sounds kind of shallow because there's an aesthetic, there's ways of looking at it politically. Politically, we have some interesting points with Django, very against the grain, very saying the African American deserves to rise out of this. Now, he did something to save Christoph Waltz earlier in the story that we never see what it is, but Christoph Waltz comes to save him. They forget they've ever known each other, but he has to save this guy, Django. Django joins him and becomes a bounty hunter. And then he wants to get his wife back. She's trapped in a plantation as a slave, so he has to be a thief assassin. And it's all drawing up to the fact that they're taking a black guy back to the Mandingo place so he can blow it up. I mean, it's a wild plot. It's like, if you become a bounty hunter for a year, I'll go back with you to this slave place and we'll taxi driver the shit out of it. We'll just blow this whole compound to a crux. And I'd never really heard in my Civil War study that there was people that went back and blew up plantations. And then I was like, of course they did, because the North was down there fighting, and of course they blew up plantations. But it just is a funny picture for me. Not because someone inside the plantation might get hurt, just because it's like total apocalyptic of the utopian ideal. This time it's funnier than Berlin getting bombed, because you're like, okay, now they're bombing these places because there's evil things happening in them, but how can they judge back then? And because reports were coming up of the Mandingoists. And that makes Mandingo a weird blaxploitation movie, because it's like totally on the grounds of being like fleshly offensive. And offensive on purpose. That's why the owner in that movie still survives, but I don't really watch it. But that the offensive nature that they're taking it to in the movie Mandingo, James Mason, once again, he's always in a controversial film. It's still totally the type of behavior that was reported to the North when the proclamation by Lincoln was made to free the slaves. Now, what's interesting about freeing the slaves is, since the slaves did all the work for the southern half of the country in the original 13 colonies, then if they freed the slaves, the South would be instantly the most poverty-stricken area. Not just because people there agreed with slavery. That was probably why they freed slaves. And that point is kind of made in these kind of films that show the African-American savior, which we rarely get. Mostly it's the white savior. The white guy comes along, and because he's there, he saves the day, because no one else can figure it out. The black savior is like saying more accurately that he's the one that had him probably come from the North, or back with him from the North and their ideals, to go blow up this plantation and other things. And that he's the black hero because he sets a lot of people free that are slaves. And mainly there's commentary on the slaves that like don't really get set free, and how he doesn't think too much about it. Like politically, that's kind of like the normal Tarantino, where it's like something bad's happening, you got to ignore it, you can't really pay attention to it, your mind's on something else, other minds are on something else. But that Jamie Foxx and Christoph Waltz and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it also says, what else does it say? Oh, Kerry Washington and Samuel Jackson. Yeah, now let's discuss real quick. This is the last thing of this class, and then we'll get back into Django next time too. But isn't it interesting how Samuel L. Jackson's acting changed over the period of his life in all of the Tarantino movies? And isn't he the only one that's in all of them? Because doesn't he do some narration in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? And is he in Grindhouse? I don't know. I don't know if Samuel L. Jackson's in Grindhouse. But he's in a lot of the Tarantino movies. In Inglourious Basterds, he's even partly the narrator. And he comes out in this sellout role on purpose. Now, you know it's not a sellout role, but he plays it on purpose, kind of to comment on the way people look at African American actors. And it's kind of like that Star Wars thing. Well, he was in the movie, so I guess we'll accept that there are some black people in the world. I don't know how they think about that. I don't know why there's racism. I don't know why there's so many people that think they're the only ones that deserve to be racist, or they're the only ones that can be racist. But somehow the majority has seized and is racist about everybody, which makes no sense because there's more people of other races than there are of any one particular race. I don't know how to explain that. But that it makes good commentary on the African Americans is because it's saying that Samuel Jackson, who keeps going back to the house and being like the house inward, like Spike Lee would say, or that he's going out onto the house, much like the slave in the yard or the slave in the house. And he's taken that to their perspective to the max, kind of like in Bamboozled, when they're like, oh, well, I'm going to join ship with the Nazi, not the Nazi again, it's another anti-liberal view. It's like this slave owner guy that Leonardo DiCaprio is playing villain, and there's more inwards in all he says than ever before, and that there's a sellout black guy. Totally put the offensivity, African American, going the wrong way. The offensivity was going so far against like what you thought was going to kill Jamie Foxx, but everything was against him. The fact that the African American had turned on him, and the guy's like got his wife in a box. And even his white friend won't stand up for him because he's afraid to die. I mean, these are bad things happening to him right at the time. Finally, just blows the whole place sky high. It's a beautiful movie. But Samuel L. Jackson, in and out, never really turns away from his sellout role. Were there African Americans that were sellouts like that? Probably not. But is it cool to do that with your Tarantino? Yes. Why? Because now we've got the movie where the first turn of events is, well, even the black guy's not going to help me out. The African American guy in there is not going to help me out. He's totally sold out to the white guy. And that Samuel L. Jackson plays that after playing all these really good African American roles all throughout Tarantino is perfect because it sets up this how Tarantino really did give him roles in his filmmaking that were really valuable, good roles that we've all seen to learn about African American acting and everything. And then here he is. He's going to be huge in The Hateful Eight coming up. And he's like the John Wayne character of the show. But of the movie. But in Django Unchained, he's the Stephen Fetchit character. That he is playing Stephen Fetchit on purpose. Works for me. Some critics didn't like it. I think if some critics didn't like it, the rest of us did. But what he's doing is he's putting this very arduous stereotype into a place, whether or not it had been there or not. Django's got to appeal for everything. He's got to appeal for the riddance of Mandingoism entirely. You know, and so that makes him a good soldier. Whether if he's fighting for the North, he probably is, because he's going to get her and go on the Underground Railroad, which we won't get into for now. But I just wanted to say that Samuel Jackson's not selling out by selling out. Or he's not selling out by playing a sellout. It's actually a real grind against his usual, I'm coming out and fighting for all the homies that I have. Very brave role for him. Very brave role. I thought it was cool because I was like, well, he's kind of mocking the whole impetus of slavery with it, but he's also saying that like some African Americans were tricked by it. I'm like, no, he wasn't saying that. He was just saying that this so happened to be the one time there was a crazy sellout, or whether it's common or whether else he's retelling history again. Like saying Hitler died at a different time, you know, like they're saying with Inglourious Basterds. But in Django Unchained, we're kind of rewriting the history because there may have been a Django. And this is where you alter with history and you're like, because it's happened in a movie, it may have happened in history anyway. That's not really logical. But what is remnants of what's happened in that movie have been traced in the past, no matter what movie it is and how disconnected it is. because it all comes from some sort of evolving ideal from the movies or from the storytelling, basically, of the movies. So what I'm leaving you with is that he was intentionally playing the step and fetch it to offend everyone, that he was really in this situation of sellout slavery. And Django didn't care who you were. He'd blow you all up, but that he doesn't blow up the African American that goes back to the plantation when it's burning gives a little hint that maybe he wasn't really a sellout and had helped Django solve the problem. Now, I don't know if he helped solve Django the problem, but Django definitely appreciated him enough to let him go. And that is where I will leave you pondering. I wonder if the final is going to be about that one, because that's too hard to rewatch and remember. No, I'm kidding. If you saw the class, you don't have to see it twice on Coursera. Just mark down that you saw it and move on. But this was class 11. Next time we'll reconvene for number 12. And I may have miscounted, but we'll add an extra class if we have to, or take one away. And then nobody will know what the true meaning of Kill Bill is. No. Actually, I like the meaninglessness of it all, because the meaninglessness and existentialness of it all is where you get to the point that it's not so much like a supernatural force that's making it. It could be a supernatural force with meditation and everything. But it's definitely a project that's bigger than anyone else can do. It's definitely a project that will go on forever. And by big as anybody could do, I mean, you could do a theatrical play, but that a movie is a theatrical play in about 80 different locations. A typical movie is like a play in about 80 different locations, is the most unwieldy of all the mediums, but that you can get it done as an independent's amazing, or you can wield your claim to fame like Tarantino and be like, it's about the movie. You're not supposed to say, what's the movie about? You're supposed to say, this is about the movie. All right, we'll talk to you in a little bit.